Merry Christmas and happy holidays, Bills Mafia. Welcome to Bills by the Numbers, where we let the stats tell you where the Bills are at. We're presented by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Coming up, a look at the last 5 Super Bowl winners. And are there any parallels for this year's Bills squad in their path to and hopefully through the postseason? We talk Bills-Chargers here in Week 16. And Steve takes a stab at Super Bowl history in the numbers game. Time to roll it out. Season's greetings, Bills fans. Welcome to Bills by the Numbers. Bills Wall of Famer Steve Tasker, Bills insider Chris Brown here with you. And we know the Bills still have some work to do just to reach the postseason. But with the way they have played of late, it appears as if they have rediscovered how dangerous they can be. So we decided to take a look at each of the last 5 Super Bowl winners and see if their paths to the postseason and run in the playoffs are something Buffalo can duplicate. Are we getting ahead of ourselves? Probably, but let's have some fun with this. All right, so we begin with the Super Bowl 53 winner, New England. Ugh. As we know, they beat the Rams as Bill Belichick completely outcoached Sean McVay in one of the lowest scoring Super Bowls ever, with New England winning 13-3. The Patriots win the East Division with an 11-5 record, 8-4 conference record. They get the number 2 seed on a head-to-head tiebreaker over Houston. They thump the Chargers in the wild card 41-28. An offsides penalty by the Chiefs allows them to kill the clock in the AFC title game in a 37-31 win at Arrowhead. Thank you, D. Ford. And they stymie the Rams' high-flying offense in one of the lowest scoring Super Bowls ever. Now, that Patriots team, Steve, number 5 in total offense, number 4 in scoring, number 8 in passing, number 5 in rushing, and on defense, not impressive with anything except points allowed, 5th in points allowed. But 21st in total defense, 22nd against the pass. Somehow they shut down the Rams in the Super Bowl. Anything you can draw as a similarity between that Patriots team and this year's Bills squad?
Man, I don't know. I only in the fact that they kind of found themselves, right? They were 8-4 in the conference. They got the 2 seed. I don't know. That seems dissimilar to me. I mean, I think that's the year. This is the last year with Brady, Gronk, and Edelman, right? Or right.
They still had those guys.
Their running game wasn't really their workhorse.
They ranked high across the board on offense.
Offensively, they were really high, and the Bills do too. I think when you look at it, you're right. They have no business beating the Chiefs in Arrowhead, and the D. Ford offsides penalty sent them to another Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Think about that for a minute.
And then they finished the job.
Think about that.
They got a gift and finished the job.
And did finish the job. And I remember after that game, the Rams head coach, Sean McVay, said, I knew during that game that he'd been had. He prepared his team to win and because of the Patriots' game plan, he had no shot. Yeah. He couldn't adjust his team to get around what the Patriots were doing to him. That to me is
it was a masterclass. That's really what it was.
Yeah.
As much as I hate to give credit to Belichick, it was a masterclass.
Yeah, it was. And scoring 3 points with that Rams offense, it's pretty amazing what they did in the regular season. So that in and of itself is the crucial. And, you know, the Patriots outplaying their year-long statistical curve in that one game.
On defense,
was really out of character.
Although they were good in points allowed all season long. For me, like, you look at the Bills, they're currently 4th in points allowed, but they're significantly better than that Patriots team in total defense, run defense, pass defense. Their offense is comparable to that of the Patriots, I think, in every respect. Now winning the division is certainly going to be a heavy lift for Buffalo from here on out, but the Patriots kind of coasted to the division title that year. The Bills need to have their foot to the floor on the gas pedal the rest of the way just to try to get to the same place, and that's not even guaranteed.
11 wins will probably do it, same as it did then, although with 6 losses rather than 5.
Yeah. Moving on, in 2019, the Chiefs win their first Super Bowl with Patrick Mahomes. They went 12-4. They won their last 6 games of the regular season. They got the number 2 seed behind 14-2 Baltimore that year, then catch a break when Baltimore is upset by Tennessee in the divisional round. Meanwhile, the Chiefs drop 51 on the Texans. They then stage a comeback win over Tennessee in the AFC title game and outlast the 49ers in the Super Bowl, scoring the last 21 points of the game to win 31-20. They were just a comeback team that year. They just turned it on, flipped a switch, and would overcome double-digit deficits like it was a walk in the park. 6th in total offense, 5th in passing, number 1 on third down, 5th in points per game. Defensively, not as good. 17th overall, 26th against the run, 8th against the pass, 2nd in points allowed. Anything strike you as similar here?
Yeah, this one does. Yeah, these guys do strike me as similar. Winning their last 6 regular season games, the 2 seed, they're going to be up against it in the playoffs. And like a lot of teams do, now you say you catch a break when Baltimore's upset by Tennessee, and they do. Sometimes that's what happens in the playoffs, where you get a low seed knocking somebody off.
Yeah.
Last year the Cincinnati Bengals kind of caught lightning in a bottle, and they ended up beating the Bills in the divisional round. And you think about what the Patriots ran up against in 2020 when the Bills hang 49 on them. I mean, they had no shot in that game.
Yeah.
But this to me, the way the Chiefs were on third down, coming down the stretch, nobody could get them off the field. They started scoring points later in the season. And their defense was just good enough. Their defense was a playmaking defense rather than a stymie. We're not going to get any yards.
Shut you down defense.
It was shut you down. It's like they'd come up with a big stop when you didn't think they could, or they'd get a turnover or something like that. It was a playmaking defense. That reminds me a lot of this team, that 2019 Chiefs team.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you. What intrigues me is the win streak down the stretch.
Right.
And that we're going to see that as somewhat of a common theme when we look at the last 3 Super Bowl winners after these 2. But that streak down the stretch by the Chiefs in 2019 is what the Bills have to do now. So if they can mimic that, and then you look, the numbers on offense and defense right now for the Bills are pretty comparable to that 2019 Chiefs team. So I'm really intrigued by this comparison, especially knowing that Kansas City went on to win the whole thing. They got some help. Baltimore gets knocked off as the top seed. Guess who's the top seed in the AFC right now, Steve?
Baltimore.
It's Baltimore.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
So some interesting parallels there, to say the least. 2020 season, the Chiefs go back to the Super Bowl, but they're beaten by Tom Brady and the Bucs in Super Bowl 55 by a score of 31-9. If we remember, Mahomes' mobility compromised by a foot injury in that game that he suffered in the playoffs, and that Tampa Bay pass rush put him under duress the entire game. So the Bucs obviously acquire Tom Brady. They had some struggles during the season. They dropped 3 of 4 at one point in November, but they get on a roll. At the end, win their last 4 games of the regular season. They get the 5 seed in the NFC playoffs because they were second in their division behind New Orleans. They draw a 7-9 Washington team that won the NFC East. Talk about a break. And they handle them 31-23, then upset the Saints in New Orleans, go to the NFC title game, face the top-seeded Packers in Green Bay, pull off another upset, 31-26, to go to the Super Bowl, which they get to play in their home stadium.
First time ever, yeah.
That Bucs team was 7th in total offense, 2nd in passing, 3rd in scoring behind Green Bay and Buffalo that year. Defensively, number 6 overall, the number 1 run defense in the league, and 8th in points allowed. What do you think translates here, if anything?
The fact that they went through like a losing streak in November, much like the Buffalo Bills. They dropped the 2 in a row to Denver, and who was the other one? I can't even remember what the Bills' schedule this year. But they get to the end and find something, and that's really basically what you're looking for. And I'll say this too. Matchups in the playoffs mean something. You get Washington in the opening round of that, and then you play a division opponent in the division round. To me, that's huge because that's a team They played them twice already.
Right.
They won the division. So you've got kind of that like chip on your shoulder about them, having to play the long way and those guys winning the division. But the familiarity really, really is a difference maker in that. So I like that for this team because of the late in the season lull and then hitting it for a month right before the playoffs, and then you get some favorable matchups.
Yeah, and with as jumbled as the AFC North is this year, there could be a team with perhaps even a lesser record than yours.
Right.
If you're a wild card team, granted you'd be the road team in that matchup, but there could be a matchup not unlike what the Bucs faced back then. I'm not saying it's going to be a 7-9 team. We're not in the NFC here, but it's going to be a team that's like 9-8. Maybe even 8-9, perhaps. It'd be interesting to see that. Once again, though, this win streak at the end of the season, if the Bills can stage that and put it together, this stuff really encourages you. But we're also seeing, Steve, that you do have to catch a break here and there. I mean, the fact that you're a road playoff team and you get a 7-9 club in your first-round playoff matchup, I mean, that is a stroke of luck that's hard to duplicate.
Yeah, that happens throughout this, this research you did. I mean, you get these teams, and I said it. We said it on the Daily Show too. There's a lot of things that go into a Super Bowl, and getting one. Think about it. Just one playoff game is a huge break. The Chiefs the Patriots end up winning the Super Bowl after getting an offsides penalty that extended their season.
Yeah.
Come on, that's the razor's edge that you're talking about with wins and losses in the playoffs.
And the other thing too, if you want to draw a parallel, is both the Bucs and the Bills have franchise quarterbacks through whom the offense runs. Same thing with the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes.
Right.
But what the Bills showed with their run game last week against Dallas may make Buffalo's offense even more diverse than the one the Bucs had, because they had trouble running the football back then. On to 2021, where for the second year in a row, a Super Bowl team got to play in their home stadium. The Rams, who benefited from trades that acquired Von Miller and Odell Beckham Jr., still stumbled in November. They lost 3 straight, but then won 5 of their last 6, got the 4 seed as winners of the NFC West at 12-5. They throttle division rival Arizona in the wild card round. They hang on to win at Tampa Bay in the divisional round, and they take the NFC title game, overcoming being down 10 points in the fourth quarter to win 30-27 to go to the Super Bowl. There, they face Cincinnati, and again, they stage a second-half comeback to pull out a 23-20 victory in Super Bowl 54. The defense closes it out. Obviously, Aaron Donald with that famous play at the end and pointing to his finger, put a ring on it, and that whole thing. If the Bills, that 8th-ranked Rams offense, very balanced, 11th in rushing and passing, 3rd in pass protection, 9th in scoring, but only like a little over 23 points a game.
Yeah.
Like they weren't a juggernaut. Defensively, middle of the pack across the board, got some luck in the postseason. 49ers knocked off the top-seeded Packers that year with Aaron Rodgers, so San Fran was a much more familiar opponent to them, and they were playing a 6th seed in the conference championship game. So very fortunate. If the Bills reach the postseason, they'd love to catch a break like that, but anything to pull from the Rams Super Bowl team with this year's Bills team.
Well, I think, you can always hope for this, but depending on how the seeding comes down, you'd love to get a division opponent in one of these playoff games.
Well, that might happen with Miami, Steve,
right?
at the rate we're going right now.
Yes, or a team like the Bills, a Kansas City Chiefs team that you see all the time.
Yeah.
They've kind of turned into a division opponent for the Bills, right? I mean, you see them all the time. They've seen them every year for the last 4 or 5 years, and even in that building, it's very familiar territory, and they've had some success there. So that is, to me, that's the thing that can line up as a Bills helper. Also, this team is a little bit like that Rams team in that it's a pass rush team, and it drives off the engine of the front. Aaron Donald and those guys up front with Vaughn coming over in the trade.
They had Aaron Donald, Von Miller, and Leonard Floyd.
Right. So think about that. Now, if the Bills could get healthy, get Daquan Jones back in the mix, have Leonard Floyd and Von Miller and Ed, that's something you could look at and say, that's the recipe right there. So, you could see that easily coming to fruition in the playoffs or here at the end of this stretch where we got 3 games left that they got to win. So, there's always something, and it's eerie to look at, particularly where they rank in the offenses and defenses coming down the stretch, right where the Bills are. The best players in the league, and the guys who win Super Bowls also, not for nothing, they turn it over. Mm-hmm. Mahomes does. Stafford did in the year they won it. Even Brady did in the year they won it. They come down the stretch. They've turned it over during the season, which is exactly what Josh has done always.
Right.
They have to have that mentality of going for it and putting the ball at risk. But they, obviously, they're hitting on. Josh is leading the league in touchdowns this year. I think if all that continues, this is the kind of the blueprint you're looking at of what it's going to look like at the end.
Again, I'm encouraged seeing that a lot of these teams go on win streaks to finish the season. That Rams team was another one. They won 5 of their last 6. Their last 3 playoff wins, though, were all by 3 points. So the coaching in those tight games was instrumental in helping them pull some of those games out. McVay is known as a master clock manager. I see the Bills as a more productive team on offense and defense than that Rams team, despite the fact that the Rams had more household names rushing the passer. But they've got 2/3 of the equation on this roster in Floyd and Miller. And you hope Vaughn continues to progress. I think he's shown some encouraging signs the last 2 games. Finally, last year's Chiefs team, which traded away Tyreek Hill, plugged in Juju Smith-Schuster, Kadarius Toney, and Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and it was enough to help lift them to a Super Bowl. The second for Mahomes in 4 years. The Chiefs won 9 of their last 10, including the last 5 of the regular season, got the top seed in the AFC after Buffalo and Cincinnati lost a game in January due to the canceled game in Week 17, so they got the bye. They were able to handle the Jaguars in the divisional round after their emotional comeback wildcard win over the Chargers. Bengals then beat an emotionally drained team in Buffalo, and Mahomes and company were motivated to exact revenge on the team that knocked them out of the playoffs the year before, beating the Bengals by 3 to go to the Super Bowl. There, they squeaked past an Eagles team that had experienced 0 adversity en route to the Super Bowl, 38-35. That KC offense tops in the league in total yards and passing and points per game. Their defense, top 10 run-stopping unit, top 10 pass rush unit, but middle of the pack in points allowed. That didn't really matter, though, due to their offense's point production. Got anything for this one, Steve?
Yeah, I like this a little bit better. The Bills' offense certainly drives the boat here in Buffalo. As good as the defense has been, it's been like I'm calling it. It's been that playmaking defense. The late interception put the game away against Dallas. The tackles for loss, the splash sacks against Dallas. Those kind of things are what this Bills defense really does well. So I like that comparison to that Chiefs team of last year. But like you say, the Bills got put out by Cincinnati in a game where the Bills were spent. They were a shell of what they were a month before. They had the DeMar Hamlin thing. You had a team in Cincinnati that was really smoking hot. And I think that when you flip this around, we're talking about all the breaks these teams get and all the things that happen. Like you get the division opponent deep in the playoffs. Like, okay, I know these guys. You don't really have to think about too much, right? But there's also at some point they'll have to bear up and overcome something really tough. That Chiefs team last year overcame a really tough Cincinnati Bengals team that was flying high and had every reason to think they were the team to go. And the Chiefs beat them. Now, that game was in Kansas City.
It was.
And we know how difficult that is. But it's somewhere along the line, as much as you look like every other Super Bowl team in the past, at some point, there's going to be that game where you just got to bear up, show up, and play your best to win.
Yeah.
That has been something that the Bills have been unable to do on both sides of the ball at any point. And even when they did, the 13-second game happens, or the kid hits a 59-yarder in a rainstorm. Yeah, you muff a snap on a quarterback sneak in the Vikings game and give them a touchdown. I mean, it's crazy. Stuff like that happens. But at some point, if you're going to go to and win it, I still believe you have to have one of those games where, listen, you got to play your best and you got to beat a really good team.
Yeah. For me, while I think Josh and Mahomes are comparable here with this comparison, I don't know that I see the same kinds of parallels with the way that Chiefs season went and the way this Bills season is going now. I think the Bills have a better run game, while the Chiefs last year probably had the better pass game. Buffalo's defense this year may have a better pass rush, and they're 4th in points allowed, and right now they're better in the red zone by a mile over the Chiefs team last year. That Chiefs team just coasted to a lot of victories because their point production was so high.
Right.
Buffalo doesn't always coast to victory, as we've seen this season with several examples, coming down to the wire. Buffalo isn't as dominant as that Chiefs team at one thing on offense, but I do think they're more well-rounded on offense.
Yeah, and
than the Chiefs.
they've got more proof under the hood with their running game, and now James Cook playing the way he is now, and Josh Allen being the point where, one team that I think way back in the past, and we've done this before. Josh Allen is a lot like John Elway was in his career. Had flashes early in his career with Dan Reeves as their head coach and went to the
3
Super Bowl and couldn't win the Super Bowl. But when they got Terrell Davis, that changed things for that team. And, of course, Mike Shanahan helped as well. But having a quarterback who is proven and then having an alternate way that not just can win games but dominate, which is what happened in the Monday night game against Dallas in Buffalo. Or not the Monday night game, the Sunday afternoon game in Buffalo a couple of weeks ago. The Bills could dominate in the run game. And you've got this quarterback back there who can put on the cape and take over the entire game if he so desires. Never had to do it. Those factors, that reminds me of the John Elway Denver team that went 2-0 in the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
That was
an old John Elway.
A very old. He was 16 years in.
The last 2 years in the league.
Yeah, that was 15 and 16, I think. Or something like that.
You got Josh in his prime.
Yeah. So I think that, to me, reminds me, at this moment in history is what reminds me most of this Bills team. But, yeah, and when I said, a minute ago when I said, you got to overcome a good team, and all, of course you do in the NFL playoffs, but I think in contrast to what we've been talking about, how similar and some of the breaks that some of these Super Bowl teams have gotten, or at least fortuitous paths through the playoffs, don't kid yourself. It's no cakewalk.
Yeah. Time to talk Bills versus Chargers, and a lot has changed on the L.A. side of this matchup over this past week. Head coach fired, general manager fired. It was a house cleaning by the Spanos family, who owns the team. So my question for you, Steve, looking at this Chargers team, are you more curious about this matchup this week or more concerned about the matchup this week?
From outside this side of the wall of the locker room, I'm curious. If I was inside the locker room, I'd be concerned. Players know what it's like to play somebody who's desperate. It's difficult. I think when you go into this game, it's an interesting balance. Because on one hand, you can say, let's go out and punch him in the mouth. Let's go and let's make a statement, make them quit early because their season's done and all of that stuff. On the other hand, that team over there has you can't be afraid of their ability to make plays against you. You got to know if you just mind your P's and Q's, don't do anything stupid, don't take dumb penalties, don't turn the ball over, they're going to struggle to stay in it with you for 4 quarters. They really are.
Yeah.
But you got to put the ball. You got to go. You got to go play. You want to get off to a fast start. You got to go. You got to put the ball away. You got to throw the football deep. You got to push it downfield. You got to hand the ball off and run. You try and get first down. So there's a balance there as to whether letting them hang around, giving them a big play early that gives them hope because you tried to knock them out early, or do you just go out there and ho-hum it down the field, get a field goal here, try and stop them, don't give them anything. You know what I mean? There's a balance there. And I don't know what the best way is, but except that if you go out there and you do have early success, you need to learn how to front run and put those guys away.
Yeah, I am more curious as well, only because the Chargers literally have nothing to lose. They do have something to play for, player to player, and that is their job future, because the coach lost his job. Players are obviously going to be thinking about theirs, and they know the film does not lie. Now, for some of those guys, it might be too late already because a lot of them quit in the Raiders game last week, and what they do on film this week may not matter. Based on what they put on film last week, the organization may have already made a decision about them, so maybe it doesn't matter and they don't give a hoot. But that is a motivation nonetheless, especially for the younger players on that roster. For the Bills, the motivation remains the same. Yes. They got to win.
They've got to win.
And there's a lot on the line. And so I think their desperation outweighs the Chargers' desperation in this game. And to your point, I think if they can get up on them early, 10-0, 14-0, I think the Chargers will fold like they usually do. I mean, the Chargers folded in a lot of games this year
where they had a chance,
when they still were in the race for the postseason, and now without their starting quarterback and a backup who, by all accounts, is extremely conservative you would think that the Bills should handle business in pretty regular fashion, like without having to do too much. But I don't mind being aggressive against that group. And I think the one thing you just got to watch out for is the gadget play, the trick play. They might have 2 or 3 in the game plan this week ready to roll because there are no repercussions.
Right.
There are no expectations. So they could
right.
try some kind of crazy Harry high school play, and if it doesn't work, well, it doesn't matter.
Right.
There's no risk involved for them. So they can take greater risks because you don't have to pay the piper. You're not going anywhere as a team. The head coach is probably not going to be here in 3 weeks, along with the rest of that staff. So what the hell does it matter? Let's let it all hang out. And the Chargers may take that approach. So I think that's the thing you just have to be mindful of. Because I don't know how you prepare for those things. You just try to be as aware as possible, I guess.
You don't even know. The play caller may have been given different instructions. I mean, it's a total dark room when you're walking in there. You don't know where the furniture is going to be for sure. And it's hard to go into a game and plan for that. You plan individually, say, hey, this guy's a good player, that guy's a good player. Still don't even know if Keenan Allen's going to see the field. I mean, good grief. You come in there without Justin Herbert and Keenan Allen? Good grief. What are they going to look like? And then you got to fight against the complacency of none of their players are playing.
Austin Eckler's hit a wall. He didn't look like the same player. And then defensively, they're 28th in points allowed. I'm very curious to see how Joe Brady chooses to attack this defense because they're 18th against the run. They're 30th against the pass. I mean, they have some pass rush success with Khalil Mack. They're 10th in sacks per play, but 14th in stopping teams on third down. I mean, they're middle of the pack at best in a lot of defensive categories, and outside of that, they're in the bottom third, including points allowed at 28th. So, to me, I think Joe Brady can pick just about anything, and it might work.
If he's going to pick something, they're just going to hand it off like they did against Dallas.
They could.
They got Khalil Mack, who's second in the NFL in sacks, 15.5. That guy can wreck a game. So, hand it off, and let's see how he handles a tackle pulling in his face.
Yeah.
Make his day miserable, and throw it when you have to. There could be a little bit of that going on as well. So it really is an interesting matchup, and how you approach this will say a lot about the confidence you have in certain players on your roster, in my opinion. If you're going to put the ball in the hand, who are you going to put the ball in the hands of in this game? Certainly, you go out and you give everybody a chance. Diggs, Cook, Josh, Kincaid, Knox, all of those guys are all going to get their throws. Shakir, but and it may come down to, hey, who had the most success? All right, we're going to keep going to you, and then force the Chargers to stop you. But I don't watch the Chargers on film, and I don't know if I'm going to want to this week because nobody's going to be playing. So that's really an issue. I think it's going to be really interesting, and it'll tell Bills fans a little bit about what this Bills coaching staff thinks about its own players. Who are they going to give this game to?
Yeah.
Who they going to lean on in a game like this? It's interesting to think about.
Just so you know, Chargers have lost 5 of their last 6, with their only win coming against the Patriots in a 6-0 victory up in New England at Gillette Stadium. To show how wild the swings of play have been for the Chargers, they shut out the Patriots in Week 13 and just 2 weeks later give up 63 to a division team they know a whole lot better than the Patriots in the Raiders, losing 63-21 last week. That cost everybody their jobs. All right, good discussion there on the upcoming matchup here for the Bills in Week 16. Bills fans, get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Just download the app today to play any way you want. Plus, with live betting, you'll get updated odds on games that have already started. Best of all, you get paid your winnings fast. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the Buffalo Bills. We transition to the numbers game, where Steve will be challenged with a little Super Bowl history. Here we go. And look, I didn't make this impossible, Steve, so I'm confident. I have faith in you.
All right, let's see it. Let's hear it.
Question number 1. Which team had the greatest margin of victory in a Super Bowl game?
Well, I know it's not the Dallas Cowboys against the Buffalo Bills.
It is not.
Although it was close.
It was close.
I'm saying Washington against Denver.
That would be incorrect. You want to take one more shot at it?
I will say Seattle against Denver.
That is close, but that is also incorrect. It was Super Bowl 24.
Oh, the one just before us.
San Francisco over Denver, 55-10. Bill
San
Walsh's
Francisco over Denver.
Yes.
Oh, yes, my bad.
55-10. That was Bill Walsh's last Super Bowl title. That's the one where he's crying with Brent Musburger in the locker room after he's interviewing him. Was this the last Super Bowl victory for Bill Walsh and the 49ers? And then he starts crying. Never forget that interview. Brent Musburger doing his best work there. Question number 2.
He took the over on the crying.
Yeah. The Patriots hold the record for most Super Bowl appearances. How many have they appeared in?
11.
Bingo, Steve. You nailed it. 11. Well done. You can take a lap for that one.
Yeah,
That's
that
good.
was they did it with Raymond Berry as head coach, and then of course the 10 with
the 86 Super Bowl.
people
Super Bowl
forget,
20.
People forget about that one.
And the Parcells one in 95.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And then Belichick's 9. Question number 3. How many teams have never been to the Super Bowl?
4 or 6. It's like it's Buffalo, Detroit. It's Houston. It's
How many teams have never been to the Super Bowl? Not win. Never
right.
been.
Right.
Buffalo's not in that category. You just said Buffalo.
Oh, win. Okay, in.
Has never been to the Super Bowl.
All right, it's Detroit. It's four.
Correct. It's 4. Now can you name all 4 of them?
Detroit.
Yes.
Arizona has. Let's see. Houston.
Correct. The Texans. Halfway there.
Tennessee's been in. Carolina's been in. Jacksonville.
Correct. 1 to go.
And I will say. I need a list of the teams now. I can't. I will say.
I believe in you, Steve. You can do this.
I can do it. I can do this.
This is compelling
I'm going to say.
podcasting.
Oh, gosh. Carolina went there with Jake Delhomme and Cam.
Yeah.
I'm going to say. Who hasn't been? Arizona's been. Cleveland.
Cleveland. There it is.
Thank you.
Hello, Cleveland.
Man, that was a hard one.
One of your best finishes to a numbers game, Steve. Very well done here. We now help you with the free-to-play pick'em game on FanDuel.com called High-Low. Each week, pick a player or team to finish with the highest or lowest total for the week in a number of different statistical categories to earn points. The more points you earn, the bigger prize you can win. Play free for a chance at $10,000 in total prizes every Sunday. Steve's going to kick us off this week with a new category to lead us off, the high for total points.
High for total points. I'm taking the Dallas Cowboys, a team that needs to bounce back this week. Everybody in Western New York is a huge Dallas fan this week for the first time in a long time. They're playing the Miami Dolphins. Of course, Bills fans don't want any success to come to Tua and those guys. So Dallas to put up fat numbers in a shootout against Miami.
All right. I am going low for points, and to do that, I'm taking the Cardinals, who are in Chicago, against a resurgent Bears defense that is very, very quietly, Steve, now number 1 in the league in run defense. I think at home they'll be able to hold Arizona down on the scoreboard. So I'm going out on a limb on this one. Got to have faith that they'll be able to keep it a low-scoring game.
I'm taking the same game I began with. I'm going to go Dallas in Miami. CD Lamb and for high-end receiving yards. While Miami has a good corners on the outside, I don't think that Kader Kohu can match up with Lamb, who is usually in the slot. He's going to make a few big plays in this one. He's going to rack up some big yards. So I'm taking Dallas Cowboys CD Lamb for high-end receiving yards.
All right, low for receiving yards. I am taking Calvin Ridley, who's been a bit of an enigma this season. Jacksonville facing a Tampa Bay defense that hasn't been terribly impressive in defending the pass, but the Bucs are a hot team right now, and they're at home. The Jags are reeling a bit, so I'm banking on that with Ridley as low for receiving yards.
For me, high for rushing yards, I'm going to stick with what I know. The Dallas Cowboys and the Miami Dolphins. Raheem Mostert for the Dolphins. He's been productive every single week, and the Bills just gashed the Dallas Cowboys for a run defense. It's hard to fix your run defense with personnel, and really it was a personnel issue, I think, for Dallas's run defense. I think Miami's fourth-ranked rushing attack is going to do well, and I'm taking Raheem Mostert to prove that with highest in rushing yards.
All right, low for rushing yards. I'm taking Motor Singletary against the Cleveland run defense. I know Singletary's had some good weeks here or there, but I think yards are going to be hard to come by even if C.J. Stroud returns to the lineup, and word is Stroud is not going to play. He is still in concussion protocol. Our closing figure deals with a post from Data with Bliss on Twitter, and using game results through Week 15, they've determined that the Week 18 game between Buffalo and Miami has an 87% likelihood that both teams will still be playing for something entering the final week, be it playoff seeding or even the division title. The next closest matchup after that in terms of playoff impact is the Week 18 game between Houston and Indianapolis. That has an 80% probability of meaning something for both teams in that AFC South clash. That's it for this edition of Bills by the Numbers. Make sure you subscribe on whatever podcast platform you use. That way you know when our next episode is out, because when you need to know about the Bills, you need to check Bills by the Numbers. For Steve Tasker, I'm Chris Brown. Thanks for listening. Merry Christmas, everybody.